Welcome, everybody. We are back again. This is your Nature Journal workshop with your regular host, John Muir Laws and Avea Moore. And we have a special guest today who is a Nature Journal educator and instructor and bee geek. We'll be talking more about that. It'll be big fun, and we're going to talk. The plan today is that we're going to between the three of us, we're going to just bounce around some ideas. Though kind of the nucleus from this came from a conversation that I was having with Steffi, and I thought, like, wait a minute, there's some really fun ideas just being bounced around here, and why don't we sort of share this conversation with this larger community? I really wish we could kind of get us all around a table and be doing this live, but some of us live further away. So we're going to be having that conversation first, the three of us, and then we're going to open up the lines, and anybody who's got thoughts, comments, or ideas or wants to kind of be in on that we're going to be able to sort of share our thoughts and ideas. So this is going to be a really fun day. And we also are really excited to introduce you to another Nature Journal instructor in the community who's got a lot to give. So one of these instructors is Steffy Baker. And hey there, Steffi.
Hey.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And
thank you so much.
Maybe what we could do is I see that there's a number of people who are online here who've taken a number of your classes and are familiar with you and friends to the work that you do. But a lot of folks don't know about you. We get you just to kind of give a little bit of an introduction to yourself and and what you're passionate about.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this conversation and open up to everybody. I'm really excited to hear everybody's thoughts and have a larger conversation and hear what everybody else is on the call. Looks like a lot of people, 27 people are saying too. That is really exciting to me. I love being able to talk about nature and art and how we're connecting to it, and more importantly, how we can support each other to do that more. So I am an artist. I've been an artist my whole life, although I have to say, I haven't always been able to claim that for various reasons. You know, it just was difficult for me to kind of grow into that skin. I grew up in a military family, and so from the time I was born in Japan, all the way to like I was 18, I think. I never lived in any place more than 2 years. And so I was constantly moving around everywhere. But what was always the same and the constant and the steadfast in my life was obviously my family and nature. And so I got to see some amazing landscapes and experience, you know, deserts. And I lived in the Middle East for a little bit, and here in Virginia, back and forth, just because that's like a military base here on the East Coast. So that has been always my salvation. It's been a place where I just am able to relax and be myself, you know. And I was a commercial photographer for a long time, and I decided that I just didn't like it anymore. I'm just a lot of hours in the dark room, and I just felt really disconnected from my old roots in nature. I mean, I grew up as a kid where we would be out from as soon as we were able to get out there till as late as our parents would allow us to be. And one of the things that I was really lucky with actually was most of the places that we lived, the house that we had would back up into a state park or something. So we could go deep into the woods and just lose ourselves there and, you know, collect tadpoles. I mean, they're just amazing.
And how old were you then?
I was in the second grade, the memories I was specifically thinking of. So I don't know how old you are in the second grade. I know that I'm just turned 49, so like 6, I think you're 6 years old. Anyways, so that was just like heaven to me. And I hated going to bed because I would always feel like I'm missing out on something. that's happening, in the woods, or a nest that we found, or a tadpole, like I just couldn't stand it. And so not, and feeling disconnected from that when I was in my mid to 30s or whatever from doing commercial photography, I just started getting back out there and spending time in nature. And I decided, oh, I'm just going to bring my sketchbook with me, and I'm just going to start to draw and document things. And my mom was an artist, and so we started doing that together. And it was, oh my God, forget about it. That just lit us both up. It has really changed the entire trajectory of my life. No kidding. So one thing led to the next, and I couldn't stop doing it. So all my free time, I was trying to find opportunities to just be in nature. And for me personally, I spend a lot of time just being quiet and looking, and I like having as much time as I possibly can to just explore and to discover and to see what is capturing my eye. So I have most of the time a really broad focus when I go out personally for my personal journaling. And then that would lead to questions, and I would have something, cross my path. And I guess about 7 years ago, that's something that actually didn't cross my path, but really was up in my face, was a bumblebee, a big, fat, fuzzy queen bumblebee, because of the time of the year. It was like in the end of February, beginning of March, and out of nowhere, she's just in my face. And, it's called scanning because they have facial recognition. And that just started geeking me out about bumblebees.
Wait, did you say that bumblebees can recognize human faces?
They totally have facial recognition. Yep. I know, right? Mind blowing for sure. And so whenever I have that happen to me, I'm like, take a good look. I'm your friend. Tell all your friends. You can trust me, type of thing. And anyways, so my mom and I started going out, and then we started exploring more of Virginia. We realized that we don't really know Virginia. It's a very big state. And so we just started taking these little trips together and spending a lot of time. And she would go off and I would go off, and then we would come back and be like, oh my God, did you see this? No. But did you see that? No. What do you think this is? I don't know. And then I call it my Forrest Gump way of learning. Like, I love to just kind of discover things, and then whatever happens to really pique my interest, I'll do deep dive research when I get back, and maybe fill up even a couple of more pages in my sketchbook with the information that I found, with questions. A lot of times I like to ask those questions and then just see what comes to me intuitively, just through observation. And then sometimes if it's really keeping me up at night, that's when I'll start looking online at all the different extension agents or science blogs or whatever, to try to answer questions. And what has been really cool is 9 times out of 10, what I had figured out just through observation had been validated. And so to me, I just felt like, wow, I'm really learning from nature, literally. And that to me felt special, and it felt magical. And so that went on for about 1.5 years, I think. And then my neighbor had this ridiculous passion vine that was just blooming. And I live in the city. I live in an urban city. Have a teeny tiny yard, like maybe 1,500 square feet. So my fence is practically her fence. And so it was just blossoming everywhere. And there was just bees everywhere. And I thought that was the botanical that really set everything into motion and really changed the trajectory of what I'm doing now. Because I had said to myself, I wonder if I can draw this to be exactly like I'm seeing it. I have a fine art background, so it's a lot of impressionistic type of things or feeling, but never like scientific, never realistic. And so that I said, let me see if I can do it. And I did, and I was really excited about that, and I saw things that I didn't know. I didn't know anything about botany at the time. And so some of the sepals on I know that's what it's called now, but in my nature journal, you'll be able to see a question that's like, what are these hooks, on the sepal? And then my mom was actually taking classes at a local botanical garden here. She's taking color pencil classes, and that teacher had said to her, Judy Thomas, had said, you might be interested in taking some botanical illustration classes. And so my mom came back and was like, you're never going to believe this, but we can like learn how to draw more realistically and increase that part of our skill. Do you want to take it? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we signed up, it was like August, and I think we went in January. And then from that point on, that was back in 2017, I believe it was. She and I both graduated that program, and along the way we were asked to be instructors. And then I left the life that I knew behind, and I'm rebuilding one now, leaning hard into anything I can do to inspire other people to connect to nature through art and science. And I don't know, I just feel like I have learned, it's like the master's degree that I never went back for. And just did it, with good old Mother Nature. So that's a little bit about me.
Wow. And so I'm hearing that your mom is really a pivotal character
Well,
in this story.
she really
Um,
is.
we have a number of people in our community who are homeschooling together,
Mm,
and it kind of something that I'm sensing. Tell me if I'm wrong. So that she was really leading by example in this, and you saw her doing it and her enthusiasm and her leaning into it, and that was an invitation that made that um, a safe place for you to join her as co-learners.
Yep, she had been my art teacher when I was in the second grade. So she has always been an artist. One of the things that we've always bonded on is art. Even when we were younger, my sister and I have one sister, she would always have some sort of activity, and she would, I don't know, find something in nature and then have us make something out of it. What does your imagination say about the rock, and make it into a character or whatever. But yeah, that's exactly right. So she and I kind of went on that journey together, and it changed even our relationship. Like we moved away from, I mean, you'll never move away from mother and daughter, but in terms of how that dynamic is, it's shifted. We teach a couple of classes together. We have a studio downtown that she and I both work out of, and homeschooling. I had a homeschooling people here in Richmond, Virginia, reach out a couple of weeks ago and ask if I'd be interested, and the answer is absolutely. I just feel like there's so much to be gained, especially with young children,
Yeah.
with nature and learning and how interactive it is. And like, that's just the way that I learn as well. I guess I am like, I need to see it, feel it, touch it. I got to have all of the learning things, not just kinetic, but hearing and speaking. So that really works for me. And I'm passionate about offering those opportunities to others, partly because I never had them. Like I think one of the biggest things that I sometimes ask myself is, oh my God, how much of your life has changed just within the past 8 years by leaning into this, completely innocent, completely no expectations whatsoever, just doing it because I needed to renew, from just feeling a little weary, if you will, from the current career that I had at the time with commercial photography. And I didn't have any expectations, let alone did I ever even have a dream about teaching or any of that. It wasn't even on my radar until I just innocently actually just started going out there and exploring it, and then becoming inspired. And then one of the things that I often say is, the invisible forces of nature know how to get me, and that is through inspiration, because I am a sucker. Like it doesn't, and in that retrospect, I am naive a little bit, and I will always follow inspiration down whatever rabbit hole it takes me. And sometimes what that means is I'm asked to change, right? I'm asked to change my perceptions, sometimes can be hard, or in the case that we're talking about that's leading up to now is my then career, and kind of take a leap of faith, if you will, and just know that I couldn't do what I was doing. So I don't know. I just feel like inspiration has definitely guided me to do a lot of things, and you just don't know until you know what is required of you to change and kind of answer that call within you. And luckily, just like anything else in nature, there's a patience there. So I didn't ever have to feel rushed or a sense of urgency. It kind of unfolded naturally, softly, but I still can't help but look back. It's like time travel, right? You like go
Yeah.
back and you're just looking at it going, holy mackerel, Andy, if somebody had said to me, even 3 years ago, even right before COVID, this is what was going to happen. I'd be like, right, that sounds amazing and I'm in for it, but I don't see how that is possible. So it continues to develop and emerge. And one of the ways that it continues to develop for me, not only as a teacher and trying to find other opportunities for anybody who wants to learn at different levels and different genres. Like I teach people not only botanical illustration and how to draw realistically, but also just simple basic shapes and forms, and you can do whatever it is that you want to do with that. One of the beautiful things about art is we all get to have a visual representation of what we're seeing or feeling and can share that. And sometimes that isn't possible except for whatever is on the page. So it doesn't have to be realistic. It can be whatever it is that you want it to be. I'm not biased. I'm not invested in the genre, if you will, that you want to learn and express yourself and connect more deeply to nature and to your inner artist. I think that in itself awakens people to different things about themselves. I know it has in me that we might not be aware of. I think that art and nature are overlooked, especially in public schools. I would love to have a rebirth of that. Anyways, so now how that's changing even more, going from the past 7 years of teaching out of my studio and at different venues around the area, and at a residency that I had last year, is I am a candidate for a pollinating steward certificate in pollination and pollinators. And so now I feel like it's taking on a whole new thing. So it's not just about the art and the nature and the different insights, but it's also, oh my God, what can I do to help more and to give more and to have my presence just help make it more positive experience for everybody, humans and insects and, whatever living creature you might be. And so I found myself signing up with a big heck yes. When I saw that program come through, I was like, oh my God, yes, this is totally born for me. I was feeling called to do more. And so I didn't know how to do Master Gardener or iNaturalist. And then when I saw this, I was like, I'm going hardcore.
What is the name of the program again?
It is by an organization called Pollinator Partnership, and they are one of the leading, along with Xerces, science-based, I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, science-based organization that researches invertebrates and conserves and helps establish habitats and restoration, and also through agriculture too. They do a lot with helping farmers who do large-scale agriculture create different areas for pollinators to help with crops, and also through conservation, because a lot of those rural areas are having a lot of endangered bumblebees specifically. At least that's what's on my radar. So they do all that, and so they offer a program that you can do online for becoming a partner of pollinators stewardship, and it's a science-based program where you can then go out and to your community, or even, which is what I have planned on doing, to your local neighborhood. I would love to have our neighborhood be pollinated, not pollinated, pollinator certified, so you can give talks and just help and educate other people to hopefully do what they can to protect pollinators of all types.
So this arc to where you are, maybe I'm not going to make it arc because then it makes you think that you're at the end of it. This path that you are currently on and transforming in, I just want to reflect back kind of what I'm sort of seeing as kind of key moments. I love the way you started describing yourself as this kid who hated to go to bed because of the fear of missing something that was going on in the woods.
Yeah, totally.
I love that idea of the little Steffi hating to go to bed because like what's happening next in the forest and wanting to run back out there. That's beautiful. And then this
It's
idea
true.
of mom being um, being both a role model and also kind of helping encourage you on. And then you took off with that, but didn't just go in another direction. You circled back and came back together with mom, and you're now finding a new path
Yep.
to do that together.
It's
That is
fun.
really inspiring. So lots of people, when they need to change, what it means is making a break and doing something completely different. But you were able to kind of weave that together in a different way. And I think that that is um, there's some really kind of as Avea says, some beautiful humaning um, uh, in embedded in that. And um, then this idea of nature continuing to fascinate you, and now this sort of new part is to think about yourself then as a role of steward in relation to this.
So
I was wondering, Avea, if and how sort of like your thoughts on stewardship kind of tie into what you're hearing Steffi describe here.
Well, I suppose that I have a question for Steffi around that, around stewardship. Um, would you say that that you're learning how to be a steward has changed your relationship with the bees compared to what you had
absolutely.
before? And how would you characterize that change?
That is such a good question. I've never been asked that question before. I've been reflecting on that question myself, but I have never been asked that. The word that immediately comes to me is love, right? So I feel like one of the inspiring motivators, if you will, for me to then feel like I don't need to do anything. But I felt compelled to take the next step and become more of a steward to pollinators specifically is love, right? You want to protect something that you love. And I just feel like I think it's a natural process. I almost feel like it is just inevitable for anybody who is a lover of nature and continues to develop their relationship specifically with nature and nature journaling, that it just happens over time. And how it's changed my relationship is I've never just like been disrespectful to insects. Bees, I've been stung by bees when I was younger. And there was a joke in the family for the longest time about how I was afraid of them. And so my sister teasingly would come up behind and be like, "Boo," and I'd be like, but I never, went out and like, I had some cousins that did with the magnifying glass and like, burn ants or whatever. So how it's changed, it's been more personal. I guess that's what I am trying to figure out the words for. It's a good question. I don't know if I'm prepared to answer that just yet because I don't know if I have the language to voice what it is that I've been feeling, on the inside. But I'll try to take up a little bit more space and do that. I think it's a personal relationship. Spending that amount of time in the field on my residency with the self-imposed subject matter for it, and then just on my own, in my own world, in my own backyard, transferring my yard into a habitat which is small. Like it doesn't even have to be acres and acres. I mean, that's nice, but it could be just as small as a balcony or a container. I just started noticing, and I started noticing that less bees were coming, and I wondered, why didn't I not see this one, but I saw that one. And so that started to make me inspired to figure out why. And then there's like a pain there, right? Because certain insects are just disappearing. A couple that are still in my yard are on the endangered list in the city, and you see less and less of them come, and I just feel sad by that. So rather than just wallowing and feeling sad, I felt inspired to do whatever it is that I can. I don't know if that answers your question completely. Whereas before I cared about them, I mean, I'm never just gonna, hurt another living thing, but I wasn't as involved. I guess, I don't know if that answers it. Don't think I had such an active role or felt so compelled, really. Compelled is probably a really good word because it's not something that I decided to do. It's something that I let happen to me, I didn't fight anything. I didn't have any expectations. I just feel like I was just kind of like ushered into my own little cocoon and is now just starting to emerge from that cocoon, and who knows what that will bring.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Jack.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you, but
I was going to say that I think that you answered it very well, Steffi. Like when you said that you protect something that you love and that it made you more involved and it made it more personal for you. It sounds like it might have even inspired you to ask different questions or to notice more carefully, like when you were noticing that certain bees weren't coming back, and then asking why that was. That when you get that personally involved, you ask those deeper questions, I think, because you're observing it from a different lens. You're not so much observing it at an outsider lens now that it involves you personally. And it sounds also as well that you want to protect the thing that you love, but also that while you're protecting it, it deepens your love. While you're protecting the bees, it deepens your love for them.
There is definitely, yeah, you're absolutely right. That was beautifully said. I hadn't really thought about it like that before, but you're absolutely right. There's like a symbiotic thing that happens and you just kind of go down the rabbit hole together, And I do feel like nature notices you, like I've definitely been out there and deeply observing in quiet. And although we're not speaking an English language or maybe even a language that is recognizable or even talked about in science, I do think that there are communications that go on, just like a dog can give you signs that it doesn't want to be touched or approached, and I feel like the communication is well, I just find myself asking, okay, what more can I do? And then all of a sudden animals and insects that had been in trouble kind of show up at my door, like for example, one of the biggest examples was my mom and I were out, we went to the beach and we were decided, let's just spend 2 weeks, nature journaling at the beach and doing freelance. I have the luxury of being able to kind of take my work with me remotely. And I was just feeling so calm and peaceful after spending a good 3 or 4 hours just in silence, journaling about the sea and the birds and everything. And I went back into the house and I just had this random thought, like, I wonder what else I could do. Like, how can I express my thank you to nature, right? And I just kind of went about it and didn't really think about it. Well, then fast forward about an hour later, we find ourselves back on the beach for around, sunset dinner time. And there is a flock of laughing gulls that are just going after each other. And they're just blood everywhere. And it ended up being that one of the laughing gulls had a huge, and I mean like, that's like what? Like, oh yeah, it was like 7 inches, right? Long, deep sea lure in its beak. And I mean, it was nasty. And it actually had 2 like claw hooks on either side. And so one side had one of the laughing gulls, another one had another side of it. And they were just trying to fly, and to get released, but it was bad. And I found myself snatching somebody's towel off of the sand and trying to capture them so that we could undo it. And we were able to do it between my mom and I. And they were able to go, and I think they probably would, or they ended up being okay. But whenever I find myself kind of innocently asking those questions, like, I wonder what I could do to give back. Something like that always happens. I won't say always, but I will say there is a pattern of that happening for sure. But what I found myself and this is where I can work on my judgments, infuriated about was nobody else helped. You know, like the beach was like packed with people and nobody helped. And that just felt scary to me. You know, I was like, oh my God, can you imagine if they just were left on their own? I mean, that just seemed brutal. Like it was not going good. There's a lot of blood. And also you're not supposed to have those types of fishing lures on the beach at that part. I mean, there's a big thing, big signs and everything about no deep sea diving and fishing and everything. Anyways, so I just find myself in those types of situations. And the same with a bumblebee last summer, I noticed was falling in some of my bird feeders. And I do have like the rocks and everything so they can have their drinks and everything. And I was just like, oh, this is interesting. So I like fished her out and she sat on the rock for a while and then she just kept on diving in there. Oops, I think something. Oops.
Oh. You're currently muted. You're currently muted. There's lower left-hand side, there's a little microphone symbol. And if you,
I see it. I had something else come through for a second, so I actually muted myself. Forgive me. Anyways, so I fished her out a couple of times and still she was there for a couple hours. And then it was starting to turn around dusk. And I thought, this looks like she's losing a little bit of life force. So I went inside, just grabbed a Q-tip with some of the honey that I had and just offered it to her. And immediately she started lapping it up and fluttered her wings and then went on her way. So I feel like nature, this is a question that I've been asking for about the past 2 years now is it possible that nature too notices you and can and comes to you in different ways to protect and, you know, help if need be, when she finds herself in situations like that, you know, like with the laughing gull or the fatigued bumblebee. Just something that I wonder.
And I like the way you're kind of framing that, as I can see sort of the personal empathic side of you kind of coming out and playing with the sort of scientific investigator side of yourself and saying like, I'm seeing this pattern. I'm wondering if that's there. Like, could this just be confirmation bias, or could there be something going on with that? And just what so many people tend to do is just sort of think that they know the answer, whatever sort of feels best to them, and insert that into the question. And I like how you are sitting with that.
I mean, I don't know. You know, these are, I don't know if I'll ever know. But I like the way that it feels to be of help, you know, and then I like to, you know, grow the arm, if you will, to help a thing or someone or whatever, from wherever it is that they might be experiencing that's not so fun.
So your journals are this sort of vehicle for your curiosity and attention. And then that crystallizes your love and is then motivating you to act, to do something in the presence of these organisms. I was wondering if you might be able to show us a few of those journal pages.
Oh, sure. I can show you my latest one. I've been going deep into bumblebee anatomy and asking questions like, what is the head all about? What is the thorax all about? Why, you know, the abdomen, like we all learned in basic science, right? Head, thorax, abdomen, 3 parts of anatomy. But what I hadn't really learned about was how are they sensing? You know, how are they experiencing? Just want to pull up. And so I've been doing a lot of research on that, and I found some really interesting, I think I can switch my screen to my document camera here.
I'm going to minimize my screen and our screens here, and then we'll make you bigger. Now, and you have a class coming up on drawing bees.
Yep, I am going to be offering an online class. I'm calling it the Ultimate Guide to Bumblebees, where I'm able to share all of the insights and research and questions and journal pages about bumblebees over the past couple of years and help other people understand them more. And we're going to learn how to draw them correctly, anatomically. All right, here I go. Let's say a little prayer and hope that the
Come on,
technological
document
gods are on my
camera.
side, right?
Document camera,
There we
show
go.
us the bees.
And we are going here. Here we go. So this is a brand new journal I've started just this past year. And you can see that this, unlike some of the other ones that I've shared even online, there is a lot of writing. Wait a minute, goes that
Yeah.
upside backwards. That's actually backwards. There we go.
No.
There we go.
Actually, it. Oh, okay, good. Yes.
Other
Yes.
way?
No,
Is
you're
that
good.
good?
This is it. This
Okay.
is right. This is right.
I'm good. Okay. So one of the things that has really been on my mind is the anatomy. Like, what are the shapes? And oh my God, I'm gonna cut right here. Sorry.
No, we
The
love
cat
it.
is
Love
always
it.
going to be in there.
Well, I'm not
And
surprised. There are animals around your house.
yeah. So what I learned was really the thorax here. This is more of like a boxy D shape, right? And so within the insect section, if you think about them coming together like this, you know, like here is the thorax, here is the abdomen part, they are connected right into here, and it's the same with the head. So there's like this little, if you will, let's do this. There's like this little V shape that happens here and that happens here. So they can move, right? So they can move around, get into different positions for foraging and everything. And then here's one of the things that has just been fascinating to me is that the legs, she's not gonna let it go.
It's lovely.
The legs are all happening in the thorax, right? Even when it seems like it's coming from the head. So they're typically happening, there's two sets that are happening towards more of the end or the back of the thorax. And then at the front, there's another set that comes, and the front is positioned to the front, whereas the back are positioned more to the back. But the great way to think about, right, head, thorax, abdomen, I'm not going to have enough space to write that there, is the head is all sensory. So it is where all of the feeling and all of the smelling even, and the touching with the, even with antlers, they can bring in oxygen, they can smell the different scents of the flowers, which also helps them to understand if that flower specifically has a high nectar yield or is going to be worth them trying to figure out. Here's the thing I did not know, and it freaked me out. And that is bumblebees that are not specialists, so the generalist bumblebees, when they are born out of their little cocoon and they leave the nest, only about 10% come back. And it's because of a couple of reasons. Number one, they have to find their way back. So they need to be able to memorize geographically from that height, okay, how to get back to the nest. The other thing is they also have to teach themselves how to unlock the nectar within a flower. Some flowers are easier to figure that out than others. Now with the specialist, meaning bumblebees that are associated with specific flowers, a lot of the times that is, okay, hold on just a second. Free Lovey. She's not going to give it up. The specialists are born with kind of like a manual that is innate to them. And so they kind of have a leg up from other bumblebees because they can go into, they can leave the nest and know what plant they can go to. And sorry, I'm getting a little distracted. Be able to extract nectar quicker. Now, where that becomes tricky is what if the nectar isn't available? What if the plant isn't available? and they still have to figure it out. So it's not that they will only forage from specific plants, it's just that they have an innate DNA with their own user's manual, if you will, that have a predisposition to certain flowers. So I didn't know any of that. And I didn't know that the bees had to teach themselves how to extract nectar. I thought for sure that that was just like an innate thing. So obviously the bees have like 5 different eyes. You have these 3 little ocelli eyes here that is more for just light sensory to begin with. It's like being in a room that you look out the window and you see light, but you don't really see anything else. You can't make anything else out. This is a great way to think about these type of ocelli. And if it's lighter, then that's pretty much going to help orient them upwards so they can move up. They also have the ability to fly backwards. They can hover, they can fly, and I've seen different aerials upside down. Interesting thing about some of the antenna is that this is like a ball and socket joint. So this can move around depending on how many segments are on the antenna will determine if it's a male or female, which is really cool. So if you can get close enough to count it, or if you can, take an image that's clear and actually count it, you'll be able to discern whether or not it's a male or female. So there's just different things like this that are amazing to me. The other thing that's amazing is everything that's happening here in the abdomen is the heart. If I had, let me grab maybe I can grab a pencil. Okay, the heart, the digestive system, the honey stomach, everything is happening in that abdomen area, which is really cool. Well, she's really going for it now. Breathe, please. She's about to, if I get disconnected temporarily, I will put it back in. So these are some of the things that I have learned. And this is one of the pages that I've been working on. The tongue itself, this is my little close-up of the tongue, has lots of hair even on the tongue to be able to lap up more nectar and pollen. And then here's another thing that I learned about nectar. I was just assuming that it is sugar water, essentially. Carbohydrates, that makes sense. Pollen, protein, sure. But the nectar actually has a lot more beneficial compounds in it, like potassium, amino acids, different things that are nutrients besides just sugar, and that's like carbohydrates, that is necessary for bumblebees to have healthy immune systems. And this is where it becomes crucial for plants, because it's like we can go to McDonald's and eat at McDonald's every day, and we could say, yeah, we had food, but I don't know if it's very nutritious. Whereas it's the same with the plant. So we might be able to say, hey, the loriope is, doing a lot of different foraging. I've seen lots of bees on my loriope, and that might be true, but it's not providing the same type of nutrients that, say, a specific native plant to that bumblebee could provide, just because of the way that the plant creates it. Different plants have different levels of nutrients and have different levels of being able to provide pathogens, even antibacterial properties to help the bumblebees with their immune system.
I'm going to just interrupt for just a second, Steffi, because
Sure.
I'm just noticing something that is really interesting. Most people probably pick this up, but look at how, these journal pages are fascinating to look at. Steffi's not focused on, I want to make a pretty picture here. This is try to make useful things to help her understand. So you're looking at drawing to understand. And also what you can see in this is iterating ideas. So let's go to the previous page, the one before this one, right? And you notice sort of the start of Steffi thinking about these sections and how they connect, and the legs, right? And noticing how things connect and how that works. And then we turn the page again, and you sort of see the further development of these ideas, right? So I think that this is kind of useful to think about, kind of journaling to understand. And we can get ourselves wrapped around the axle about, if I'm wrapped around the axle about, I've got to make this into a pretty picture, then I don't have as much kind of useful information on this. I also like to, it's neat to look at the way that Steffi is, she mentioned sort of simplifying things to basic shapes, the cubes in that thoracic segment. And let's notice just sort of how you're visualizing things, how you're kind of putting ideas down. And it's all about the information rather than the presentation. And I want to give everybody permission to do that in your journal.
Yeah, this is the one, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, please, go on.
I was gonna say, this is definitely the journal that is all about asking the questions, and I call it my mad scientist journal. I have a couple of different journals. Especially when I'm trying to figure something out, I've noticed that, and I learned that I was drawing bees wrong about 2 years ago. And so this is part of coming into a different knowledge. And so I like to just write down my ideas. I like to break it down into basic shapes. And then I can go back and, draw different things. Like, I will work out, once I finally understand what is happening, I'm able to draw it better. And so that for me is what drives these types of questions and breaking it down into basic shapes. A big believer into doing contours of any type of structure that I'm drawing. And so what that looks like is, I'm about to pull it out. I think this is it. I'll start doing things like this. This is out of a sketchbook, but still. So here was me doing it wrong, right? So just breaking it down into basic shapes as a generic type of bee form. But I realized, these actually don't make this shape, right? This isn't this. It is more of this, the head is more of a D. So it's like this, right? If you were to look at it in the profile, if you look at it from above, it does this type of thing, right? And then you would have something like this, and then this would happen. And so then I will make myself my own little tutorial sheet so that I can see it again and again, because I have to draw it, step by step. It's also useful when I want to share it with a class, but I do this for myself first. And then if I want to take it a step further, I'll start to create. All right, now she's lying on my keyboard. Hold on just one moment, please. All right.
While you're wrestling the kitty, I just want to point out that sort of what's kind of going on here is that in order to understand, Steffi is simplifying what she sees. So simplifying it to these basic shapes and coming up with a system. But so that probably a number of people have done. But what I want to point out, the genius of the next step, is that she is then looking at that system and seeing, like, how is it different than what I'm actually looking at? Because if we kind of come up with a formula, say, to draw bees, we then can start following our formula instead of looking at the bee. And what Steffi's done here is then look back at the bee and being willing to then modify the formula, modify the plan, and that then allows her to be willing to modify. I just put up in the chat there. Oh, and now you're working fuzzy. Now you're working fuzzy.
So I realized this was my mind's drawing of what a bee is, a generalization. And then I have to go to the next step because, my ultimate goal is to do it realistically. So I'm looking at what are the different techniques I can employ in my wheelhouse. that will help me render the hairs on the bee. And can I do it with like a pen? Is it going to be better with graphite? Can I incise or indent? You know, like I think that's everybody's kind of first go-to is let me pull out the stylus and indent a bunch of things. And I'll try it out in color. Ultimately, I ended up, this is where I kind of ended up.
Oh,
And I,
oh. So
and
are
I,
you putting down yellow, then embossing on top of that yellow, and then putting the black down on top of the embossed yellow here?
no, here, what I ended up doing was
Oh,
I first, I think you can see that, yeah. I first did a form. So if my abdomen is something, let's pretend this is three-dimensional, right? And he has a couple of different segments, and based on the segments, we'll tell if it's a male or female. I think I didn't finish my thought on that one. So 7 segments equals male. I'll put it to 7 segments equals male. 12 equals female, right?
so
Um,
is that on the abdomen or on the antenna?
yes, this is on the abdomen. So the segments, like if you have this type of guy happening with the abdomen, right? So if it's 7, it's male. If it's 12, it's female. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. It's the if it, oh my god, I just confused myself. You're absolutely right. The antenna is this. So 7 is male, 12 is female for the abdomen. 6 is, oh my god, 6 is the abdomen. 6 is female. I just confused myself for a second. Forgive me.
No worries, no worries.
And 7 is male. All right. So this is antenna. Anyway, so the first thing I do is I am going to create added yellow. This is done with color pencil, by the way. This is all like a color pencil. Polychromos color pencils is I'm going to just pay attention to the shading and put down all of the color first. And as long as I am keeping my highlights where the highlights are and starts to get deeper and darker orangey type of color in there, it'll give it form. And then here is the trick that I found. The trick is in order to make hair look realistic, it's a complicated thing, right? Because not only does hair have its own pattern, it is also around a form. So it depends on the shape of that form, how thick the hair is. So now what I do with the black color pencil is I am looking at the negative shapes and I go right on top of it. And I am not thinking to myself, hairy bee abdomen. I'm thinking to myself, where are all of the really dark shadows, for lack of a better word? Because when you start to really look at hair, and I wish I had set up my scientific, I have a little digital microscope that we could have looked at one of the bees that I have collected from my yard. Because I know I'd be able to show you. But that being said, when you start analyzing here, you realize it's not a bunch of black lines like this that make up the hair. It's actually the white, it's white, right? The little white lines that you start to notice. I think I can zoom out. And so then you have to ask yourself, well, how the heck am I going to create white lines in a pattern? Not just willy-nilly, like a lot of people will just do one of these things. Like here's a bunch of hair, but it's going around a form. It's three-dimensional. It has a pattern. It has to have purpose in order for it to look realistic. And if I'm going to do something like that, it's better to not cross it, but instead come up and skip. And then what ends up happening is over time, you get the negative space. And I'll do it right here. Oh, here's another example. So instead of doing grass like this, what you see a lot of people do, and just kind of go for it. If you skip, meaning you do this, you come up, you skip it, you come here, you skip. What ends up happening is it's a little bit cleaner. And this works really well with a lot of them. The negative space itself, let's see, we'll put one here, starts to act as the hairs as well. Does that make sense?
And
So
also that
we're gonna-
kind of, it kind of gives me the sense of light sparkling in.
Exactly, because you're gonna have that on the highest part, right? So here's a little
Yeah.
example of what I was doing for thoraxes. And since that's very rounded, like that square, like this, it would be again and again. And we're gonna do this. And then if you were to look at it from this side, I'm just making a mess here. And then the head, you're just gonna see a little bit right here. Very generic, but this is rounded. And the wonderful thing about thoraxes, I'm gonna just come back to this for a hot second, is that's where all the muscle is. So the head is all the sensory things that are happening with smell and feeling and even vibration, by the way. And then the thorax is where all the muscles are. So that's where all the movement is coming from. The wings, I think I have, this might not be the journal that I put wings in because I have filled it up already. Let's see.
Well, it's
Here's
fun to see
my-
you thinking on paper like this. This is cool.
It's like, what is happening underneath? At first, I thought they were even, like the thorax had it a bunch and then you just evenly divided it for the legs, but that's not the case. The front legs are always closer and the back legs are behind, same on top. So here, let me see if I can zero in here. Here is a little idea of the wings. So there's two sets of wings and it's coming across closer towards the front. So that too isn't directly in the middle. And these are independently moving, right? So they have the ability, kind of like hummingbirds with figure eights. They can move this guy one way, that guy another way, doing this type of motion. And then the other cool thing is that the hind wing can attach. There's little tiny, let's say, hooks, for lack of a better name, that can go into this really deep margin on the forewing, and then it ends up looking something like this, where you see the one wing. Here, let me grab.
Yeah. Yeah, we
This
always
is
sort of read in our
like
our
that.
entomology books that we have, one wing on the flies and the double wings on each side of the bee.
Yeah.
But you're pointing out that what you're seeing when you're looking at it is they're kind of unified as one big nugget there.
Like this. Yep. So here's my final, if you will, when I was starting to make handouts too, where I brought all of this crazy, doesn't make any sense, sketchy information. And then I start to refine it into this little pen and ink drawing that I had done for myself and also ended up being for a class handout. So we think of a bee's wing being like this, right? Like that's the whole wing. Here's the forewing, here's the hind wing. But what ends up happening is this is, let's say it's right here type of thing. The underside of the forewing has a deep crevice that this hind wing then can attach itself to. And so it kind of locks in if I do this. And what's wonderful about that is it helps to trap the air so they can get flight and go. And they can go up to 16,000 miles up.
Wait, 16,000 miles?
10,000 to 16, depending on the species. Just like monarchs can fly really high like that. I went to Google Earth and you can kind of zero out at and it will show you in the lower right hand corner. Oh, this is 10,000 feet up, right? Not
Yeah.
1,000 up feet. I'm sorry. 10,000 feet up. This is 16,000 feet up. I think I said miles. Whoops. And I'm just like, oh my God, that just brought on a whole new set of questions. Anyways, this is the type of stuff that we would be going deep into on my little ultimate guide to bumblebees. It made me ask the question, and of course I zeroed in on my neighborhood, and I went to 10,000 feet, and I see a lot of concrete, right? A lot of concrete and a lot of dead areas from where the interstates are connecting or mediums in the neighborhood that are just, they don't have anything that is full of life. That's just your grass that continues to get mowed down every once in a while, or dirt, literal dirt. And I think to myself, what are they seeing at 10,000 feet? You know, I don't know. I know that some of the research that I've done has said that obviously they can see ultraviolet light. Also, they're able to use grid patterns as a way to find home. So that could be another thing. And I asked myself, well, if this is the environment that is putting them into peril, and it looks like this from this amount of feet up, what would the environment look like if it was ideal? How would it be different?
Yeah.
Anyways,
So
these are just.
I want to also kind of just sort of note here that you sort of see in the background here lots of iterations, lots of thinking about how these things are put together. This is what it takes to kind of put together a nature journaling class. And so you see that there's a tremendous amount of thinking that kind of when an instructor kind of puts out a handout, here's a handout, on the cutting room floor around their heels is a huge pile of iterations of this stuff. And that's one reason why I encourage people to also find ways of supporting supporting instructors, because when they come to put on a class, and then we see the fruits of all of this work, but it's never that that we sort of sit down and then kind of the first idea that kind of comes to our head is what ends up in that class. So you kind of get an insight into a bunch of the prep work that is involved in doing these things. This is really cool. I've put into the chat, Steffi, markedbythemuse.com, your website. And people who want to connect with you can go there. Will the sign up for the Bumblebee class be through that website?
Yes, it will.
Excellent.
Okay.
I thought it would be fun to kind of open up a conversation with anyone in the Nature Journal Club community here who's currently on the line. If there's something that has been said that has sparked ideas in you that you wanted to riff off of or bounce off of, the way you can let us know is by using the raise hand function. Oh, there we are. Hi there. And we'll be kind of looking for anybody in the group with questions or hands up. And I'm going to go to my gallery view, and you can use the raise hand function. You can also use the you can just sort of turn on your camera and wave at us, and we we'll see that. And I'm not seeing any questions at this point. So Steffi, would you? Let's jump over to. We're going to jump over to bring in Jasmine, who's got a question, a comment, a thought, or an idea. Jasmine, you can now unmute. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, Steffi. Thank you for this talk. It's been so fascinating. I had kind of a burning question based on my experiences with bumblebees, and maybe anybody else can weigh in, but sometimes when I'm walking around and I'll stand and I'll see like some pretty flowers and there's bees. One bumblebee will start going around like 5 times going bzzz, like almost like it's mad at me. But I was just curious if maybe you or anybody else has like a guess as to what it is doing.
I can take a stab at it. I mean, the truth is we'll never know exactly what it's thinking or doing, right? We can just, through deductive reasoning, I think is our best shot, and reaching out to other scientists that are really studying that type of behavior. But based off of my experience and my current knowledge, and that might change, so don't hold me to it. I would say one of two things. One, you might, well, actually 3 things. One, you might be a little too close for comfort, right? And so just like dogs and cats will give off little cues that you're a little bit too close, I have observed that bumblebees do the same thing. And what bumblebees will do are, one, fly around, like circle you, like, hey, close, close, close. The other thing is, I don't know if you've ever been close enough where you'll see like a leg get kicked up. A bumblebee will kick up its leg to say, hey, you're getting a little bit too close. And then if you step back a little bit, it will put its leg down. Wow. Have you seen that, Jack?
No. It just sort of, it just sort of makes me think of the degree to which I've watched a lot of bird behavior. I've watched a lot of mammal behavior. But watching being able to look at a bumblebee for cues to for their behavior, that hasn't been on my radar. That's really, really, really fun, and it makes me want to kind of run out and find a place where there are bumblebees right now.
Right, stick your face in the bumblebees, and then the other thing they'll do is they'll vibrate their wings. So sometimes they'll still go about their business, but they always kind of have an eye on you, and they'll vibrate their wings. So now we have three possibilities. The 4th one could be that it's just trying to get to know you, right? So you're close for whatever reason, and it's scanning you to recognize you and to discern whether or not you're a threat, because they do have facial recognition. And so sometimes, here's a great example. A couple of years ago, I had a birdhouse like right outside my kitchen door. I mean, right outside the kitchen door. You open it up, boom, there it is. And a bunch of eastern bumblebees, Bombus impatiens, took residency in it. And I thought that was the coolest thing. I was like, oh my God, yes, you're so here. This is what I wanted. I wanted you to have habitat here. Well, I ignored them. I annoyed them a little bit too much because I was getting a little bit too close and I was there a little bit too long, and that they liked. And so I noticed that they would send one out, and it would kind of circle me, or go straight for me, kind of as a way to be like, back up, back up. When I backed up enough, it didn't do that. And so observing that, of course, I can't help but to test it, right? So I'm like, a little bit like this, a little bit like that, a little bit like this, a little bit like that. And they're like, yes, yes. So that's kind of how I, through my own observations, realized, oh my God, they're totally telling me to stand back, right? I'm a little bit too close. And so I just give them a little bit more space. Now, if that was happening, Jasmine, like not just on a bunch of mounded flowers, but like on the ground specifically, or even around a fence or something, I would say you were close to a nest, right? But if it's just a group of flowers like inflorescence and they're giving you the once over, I would just encourage you to step back a little bit and see what happens. And if it doesn't stop, then step back a little bit more and then see what happens. But I have a feeling it's one of those 4s, but I and anybody else will never know for sure, right?
I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You can always, I also encourage you to do what I do sometimes. I'm like, hey, tell all your friends, take a good take a good look, scan it in, get it in there, because I come in peace. Make sure you tell all your friends that too. I'm a friend.
Jasmine, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's join Stephanie Benedict, who's got another question for you. Steffi? Hey there. You can now unmute.
Hi, thank you. I just actually wanted to offer another possibility for why bees might circle like that.
Yes.
And that is there are more kinds of bees than just bumblebees.
Mhm.
I have carpenter bees in my backyard, and I see them do that all the time around the tree or the plant. I think it's guarding behavior. I think they're just territorial, and because they do it whether I'm there or not, whether anybody's there, they're always just patrolling that tree. So that's one possibility.
That's a great thing to bring into the conversation, because carpenter bees are known for doing that type of territorial behavior. That's why I had said if you're near wood or like a fence or something, because they're going to want to have that unprotected wood to kind of make their little nest in. You're absolutely right. Other solitary bees are smaller and don't exhibit that type of behavior. They're more like, just leave me alone and I'll do my own thing. They'll take a nest up into like pithy stems like elderberries and stuff. Matter of fact, I just had the coolest experience when I was watering my elderberry the other day, and I had clipped off some branches and I just let them stay there. All of a sudden, 2 little antennae came out and then saw me and immediately went back in. And then it was like this little peekaboo thing that happened. And I was like, oh, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, lady. So you better get used to it. And I happened to have just my cell phone with me. Unfortunately, I did not have my better camera with me, but I did manage to take a couple of images, and I really wanted her to come out because I was just curious. I wanted to see who she was so that I could identify her and everything, and she just was not having it. I must have sat still like that for a good 30 minutes. And then finally I remembered, I just couldn't let it go. I was like, I need to have this. It's so awesome. And then I remembered bees are very sensitive to vibration. And I also realized, she's not coming out because she's not feeling safe. So let me see if there's something I can do that might help her feel safe while I can still document her. There's a big bee challenge too that's happening. So it's really important that she be documented. And so I just started humming. I was like, if she is sensitive to vibrations, I wonder if I did a little hum, like a friendly hum, if she would come out. And after about a minute or two, she started coming out, and then a car went by and she went back in. And then I hummed a little bit more and she started coming out, and then a dog went by with like a walker and she went back out. After about 3 minutes of me just continuing to just hum, and I did take a step back to give her a little bit more space and zeroed in on her using my camera. She came out and she just kind of sat there, and you could see her antennae just like feeling it out, and she just looked at me and then flew off and went about her way. So there's so many bees out there, right? There's like what, 20,000 in North America, different bee species, and the majority of species are little tiny solitary bees that we never even see, and that are so friendly and docile and beautiful. Like that one was a blue green iridescent type. Anyways,
Cool.
it's fascinating.
Thank you.
Stephanie, I really like, sort of as a naturalist, I really like the idea of when we hear an explanation for something, what people tend to do is kind of go like this, our sort of need for an answer gets satisfied and we stop thinking. And what you did is you said, or this, and kind of coming up with alternate explanations really helps keep our, that we can test against evidence. Helps us keep kind of an open mind to those possibilities. So, Matt, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
We're going to join Holly. Holly, we're going to put you in our spotlight here. Holly, you're live with Steffi.
Hi. This has been wonderful, and as soon as you talked about the facial recognition, it like just lit up my head, because I have these carpenter bees that tend to be kind of aggressive when they're, some people get like swat at them and stuff, which is just dumb. But this one, there's a couple of bees. I don't know whether it's the same bee or whether they trade places, but they come and they greet me when I go out the door, and they hover like a helicopter right in front of my face. And I literally had this feeling the other day that it was looking at my face. And I said, yeah, I live here. And I just I just stood there almost like I was being silly with my granddaughter kind of thing. But it was just like allowing myself to think that bee might see me. But then when she said, they do see you, it's like, it's really a cool thing. And I love the idea of humming with the vibration, that could be another communication with the bee. So I'm going to try that.
Go for it. I would love to hear how that turns out. It's just a thought that came to me, and it happened to work out. Now, I don't know if that was 100% happenstance, or what. But it will be kind of fun to test, right? Can you imagine all these people out in the field humming?
I think you've just inspired a whole bunch of bee hummers now.
We might be humming.
How can we
out,
help but
what's the
hum with
right
the bees
hum?
now?
That's too
Right?
great. Thanks a lot.
I mean, you're welcome. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was awesome.
Yeah, sure. Bye-bye.
That's really fun. Also, I want to point out again what Steffi just did with this sort of bee humming hypothesis is exactly the way we want to be thinking when we're kind of exploring these things. We're, like, this is an interesting possibility. Like, what is the impact? I did this and then this bee came out. What a lot of people do is we fall for the post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy, which is that I hum, it came out, therefore the humming made it come out, right? This happened and then this happened, therefore this caused this. And so there's there are other possibilities. And notice that Steffi said also that, like, this is something that I want to explore more, because maybe it's just sort of a coincidence. I don't know if this was causal, right? It's really hard for us human beings to think that way, because if we see something and then the other thing happens, we want to kind of like, oh, you caused that? Great. Okay. I've got this figured out. But that's also, that also, it is it's an example of kind of clear scientific thinking. We can bring that to our nature journaling, and it doesn't make it any less joyful and fun. And that's really fun.
It could make it even more magical, because instead of having a hypothesis that you're trying to prove, you're open to exploring phenomenon that you might not have been open to, And to be fair, Jack, I feel like I had a lot of training in letting go of assumptions and judgments, especially when I was younger. I found myself in a pattern of being judged as the new kid all the time, and some people are harsh with those judgments and others aren't, and even just myself as well, that I went through a good little phase of, no, the lesson here is don't assume, don't judge. And so it's not something that I came to the table with innately. And I'm just going to put on my good scientific hat and not be that way. It's something that I was molded into holding space for,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned, sort of trying to prove an idea, that's the other kind of, if we kind of get into what's called confirmation bias. Right, where if I kind of go like, I'm going to prove this, then what happens is every time it happens, I remember that, and every time it doesn't, I forget that. And I go like, look, I proved this.
Yep. And we could do I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
We can do the exact same thing about the way that we choose to look at the world and people around us, right? So somebody who has the experience of, I'm always abandoned, I'm always left out, nobody likes me, puts on those glasses and just proves that to themselves, as opposed to the same person can put on a different pair of glasses, a rose pair of glasses, right? And be open and like, oh, everybody loves me. I'm a happy, friendly safe places to be, and their experience will be completely different, you know. And so I do feel like it really matters to try to get to the space where you can just not be invested either way, you know. It's hard, it's not easy, especially when you start taking it away from nature journaling and observing things outside of yourself. That's always easier than when we're trying to apply it inwardly. And so that's one of the things that I just like to do. I've done it even when I was a kid, like, oh, I wonder what the tables can teach me type of thing. How can a bumblebee help me see things that I maybe not have been open to seeing before? And sometimes that looks like coming head to head with urine, cringing on somebody else's face. That little tiny insect is not coming out of its, you know, the elderberry's branch because it's definitely afraid of you. So sometimes I realize that my exuberance can also make another creature feel threatened, you know. And so I don't like to think of myself that way, but in that case, I was definitely aware of it, which is why I step back, you know. Anyways, I think it's harder when we start to apply those lessons to ourselves emotionally and increase our emotional intelligence and our awareness, you know, of ourselves.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, but you know what a lesson there. These things that we're practicing with bees. If we can take that to practicing with the person in the car that just cut us off, and I'm not going to make
Right.
assumptions about I know you, right?
Right. You don't know what
No,
somebody
we
else could
don't.
be experiencing.
We don't. We
We
don't.
just don't.
Mm, mm, mm.
I think
Let's.
it's helpful to just give people the benefit of the doubt.
So I'm going to ask everybody to grab your pens right now and write down, give other people the benefit of the doubt.
Mhm.
The principle of charity.
Mm.
The only qualification I would put on that is if you feel that something may jeopardize your personal safety, then sometimes we are we're going to put our air bars in a different location. But you know, when we're thinking about other people, there is I think is this the genetic fallacy? You'll have to help me with this, Avea, where we think that my own responses to things are in response to, like, these things are happening in the environment, and when I see them doing it, the other person doing it, I think they're responding because of some, like, you know, they're just a cruel person. They're you know, it's a characteristic of their behavior, and I think I know something more globally about them, where we think that ourselves are just a neutral entity, kind of reacting to whatever the environment does. You'll have to help me figure out which fallacy that is. Avea, you're muted.
I want to say that sounds like attribution there, but let me
Mm.
The attribution. Okay, we'll look into it. So in the meantime, let's bring in Jen. We have Jen and Chris, and then I think Avea found a couple of other questions in the chat. So Jen, you can now unmute yourself. I'm going to add you into the spotlight. Thank you for being with us. Oops. Let's try that again.
Hi, Steffi. Hi, Jack. Thank you for being here. I'm a veterinarian, so I'm interested in honeybee medicine. There's not that many continuing education courses. I've signed up for some in the future. But I was wondering about if you've come across any overt signs of illness in bees or illness behavior. But first, I wanted to quickly show this bee that I found in a patient the other day, a dog's foot.
Oh, wow. That's a honeybee.
Usually looking for a little stinger, but
Yeah.
a good one. There's the problem.
Wow. I have observed disease specifically, and I observe more every year, actually. Pathogens like mites on bumblebees and honeybees. It was disturbing to start seeing that on honeybees, especially at my local like hardware store I was at last summer, and it was like there was a little gang of not honeybees, but of bombus. I think it was two species, like bombus impatiens and bombus pennsylvania. Anyways, like an eastern honeybee, and they were looking rough. I mean, those wings were tattered. There a lot of missing hair, and you could physically see with your naked eye different things that had been attached to them. And I had taken a couple pictures and I sent them off to an organization called Xerces and had some questions about it. And the people there were super nice to write me back and go, yeah, I think those are probably some mites, but here's the deal. We don't know if they are just lifting a ride to go someplace else, or if they're actually causing harm. There's just not enough. We just don't know enough, you know. You might like a book called The Bee's Mind. Have you ever heard of that book?
No.
You might want to check that out if you're interested in learning more about honeybees' minds and the way that they work and everything. You might find that really fascinating.
Cool. I'll check it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Good to see you again. Also, Jen, you may be interested. On June 7th, I'm going to have a guest on who is a woman who is a bee researcher who studies bee viruses.
Oh, perfect.
And yes, so a bee virologist will be on, and that should be a lot of fun. And so we'll be talking a lot about bee diseases and observation, and it should be a good time.
I was holding back saying I'll be there. Thank you guys.
Oh, no,
Don't hold back.
No, don't hold back. Yeah, thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
Also, Jen, shoot me an email. Remember, we wanted to set up a workshop on geeking out about skulls. And when you're ready, shoot me an email, and it'll probably be after the summer, and it'll be a lot of fun. Thank you. Let's join Chris Todd. Add you to the spotlight, and Chris, you can now unmute.
Hi, I'm just wondering if you're familiar with this man, Dave Golson. He's a bee enthusiast from the UK, and he does have a chapter, or not a chapter, but a section on diseases, and talks about the fiddliness of having to diagnose the difference between a fungus and, you know, all kinds of things. But this is an unillustrated book. It reads like a novel. He's also written, see, A Sting in the Tail. He's also written another one since then. I think this was in 2010, around there. It's wonderful reading. It's just, he's started the Bee Conservation Trust, Bumblebee Conservation Trust in UK. And I just thought it might be a nice connection. He has no illustrations. He might need an illustrator for future books.
Hey. I'm familiar with their site. They have an amazing amount of information. You guys are doing more, or the British are doing more research in bumblebees than what we are in America. So yeah, check out that site. That site is awesome for any of you who want to do.
He has an international flavor. Yeah. Yeah, I think I picked it up in New Zealand, but he talks about all the different farming techniques that are changing because of bees, and they've really made a difference. It's a good read.
Oh, that's a great thing to bring up. Thank you. I wrote it down.
Yeah, So yeah, our on the 7th, our guest is going to be also kind of talking about some things related to that, about bees, diseases that, are they carried by honeybees, bumblebees, and spill over between species, which is kind of relevant for
Right.
us these days. There's all these
Yeah.
things going on in bee land
I
that
never knew bees could.
isn't this a crazy planet?
They
The more
catch
we learn about it,
diseases
the
that
more like
we don't.
nuanced and interesting
Yes.
things are.
Indeed. Those
It's
are
so
our little
much fun.
aliens out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Make contact.
Amazing. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring the mad botanist back on.
Yay.
Add spotlight. Dear friends, Van Moore, the mad botanist. Now, there were a couple of people who had
Questions.
other questions that you found.
Yes. Let me scroll back up. Okay, so Mira is asking, how many varieties of bees are in Virginia?
That is a really good question. So I believe there is, well, you know what, I might have to consult my bee ring binder. I don't remember. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yep, 12. There's 12 species of bumblebees in Virginia specifically. But out of those, I believe 3 or 4 are on the decline, and one of them hasn't been seen in a very long time. So whether or not it's actually extinct or not, we don't know. It could just be that it hasn't been cited,
So 12 bumblebee species.
12 bumblebees in Virginia. Matter of fact, I can send you guys a link to be able to download some more information. Here's what I had done. So this is what I had just consulted. Blah, blah, blah. This is all available online through Xerces for free. They let you download all that stuff for different parts of the states too. So that could be another good resource. They have pollinator cards where you can download according to your geographic location, different plants that have been observed for the bumblebees in your area. And then you can download a nifty little sheet like this, but instead of it saying Virginia, it'll say wherever it is that you live. So this is what kind of started me on doing it, because I was like, I'm going to observe each and every single one of these, and I'm going to illustrate them, and I'm going to learn more about them. And it ended up being that the ones that I started to observe right in my own backyard were on the decline. So you never know what you have in your area.
I can relate to that a lot.
That's a great question, though.
And then, so it sounds like 12 bumblebee species. And then I'm seeing that Mary Larson is saying 400 total of native bees in Virginia. So would a lot of those be solitary type bees, do you think?
Absolutely. Yep. The majority of the bees are solitary, the rock stars are the honeybees, right? And the bumblebees, and we know about carpenter bees. But I didn't even know about solitary bees until I just started spending more time in nature. And matter of fact, there was a couple of them that were swarming this New Jersey tea bush that I have in my yard. And at first I thought they were gnats because they were so small. Some of them are only the size of a grain of rice, right? They're so small, and they were landing on me, and I was kind of doing one of these things. And then all of a sudden I looked a little bit closer, and you're like, oh my God, that's a teeny tiny bee. And that can send you on a rabbit hole too. And so anytime that you see a twig or a branch or something that might have a little fibrous like sawdust coming up from the top of it, that's probably one of the solitary bees making its nest. And it's just one mama, it's just one queen solitary all by itself, whittling out those types of pithy stems, and we'll make different chambers and lay her eggs along with some pollen in there.
And they never get to go to the bee end.
They don't want to. They like to have the solitary life. They can do it better by themselves.
Excellent.
And then we've got a few other questions. One of them was, what was the name of that English bee site that you were mentioning just a bit ago?
The Bumblebee Trust,
Bumblebee
the Bumblebee Trust Conservation. Mhm.
Conservation. We also have a question from Deborah about whether or not you sell any of your artwork.
That is a really good question. Right now I do not have a store up, but I plan on having one back up by the end of the summer. I do take commissions, so feel free to shoot me an email.
Also, Jack and I were looking behind the scenes about what the error was, whether it was genetic fallacy. We think it might be the fundamental attribution error. I think you're right, Jack.
That's when we think that I'm motivated by the events happening around me. Other people are motivated by fundamental aspects of their personality. You know, I'm just responding to the situation. You're biased.
Right, it's your fault, not mine.
Yeah.
You need to act like this so that I can feel better.
We also,
oh, sorry.
We also have just a few more questions and also something funny that Ray Bonto said. So Mira also wants to know, if you're allergic to bee bites, how do you react when you see a bee close by? What's the best way to?
That is a really good question. Number one, I would always carry my EpiPen on me because you just never know and you don't want to ever put yourself into harm's way, right? And number two, I would stay cautious, keep my space. But there is one thing that I think has been quantitatively proven, and that is if you're out in your own garden or even visiting a park or whatever, and you see a bunch of flowers and you just want to observe, as long as you're going up there calm and collective, 9 times out of 10, nothing's going to bother you. But because you're allergic to that, and depending on the level of allergic, you do not want to mess around with that, right? So just be cautious. And I find that the calmer you are about things, that will send out the vibe too that you're not a threat, But I would just be careful about that. And for other people who don't know if they are allergic to bees, when I was getting ready to go to my residency last year out into a rural part of Virginia, I hadn't been stung since I was a kid. And since I've been a kid, I've had all these weird allergies pop up. So my doctor ran some tests to see whether or not I would need to bring an EpiPen out to begin with, because you don't want to be out in a place like that and then realize, oh yeah, you do have a reaction to it. So you can always take caution. And paper bees never stay. I can guarantee you that. So photography, books, there's lots of different ways to explore that might help one be safer.
Definitely. Also, Ray Bonto's response to that question was beware. And he also said, he also had a really great pun. He said, where is it? What do bees drink from?
What do bees drink from?
Beakers.
That's classic.
All right, actually, Ray Bonto's just thrown down the gauntlet. All right, everybody,
Right.
Here's our challenge to you right now. Everybody, you have the next 30 seconds to try to come up with a bee pun. Don't hit it, type it into the chat, but don't hit send yet. Everybody, see if you can come up with a bee pun. And is everybody ready? See who's got a bee pun. With this group, I'm expecting a lot out of you folks. Ready? Go for it. See, there we go. There we go.
Seeing a lot of good puns in here.
Yeah, Hamed. humanitarian crisis.
And then the flower saying to the bee that you're beautiful. I love that. Or to be or
I
not.
do love that one.
Um,
Stop beating around the bush. That's
Yeah.
a good one, Cheryl.
Mhm.
and then Jack wants to send Steffi a big hive 5.
Oh, I love that one.
Also, one more quick thing. For folks who are wondering, especially because not everybody can see the chat in the recording later, the organization that Steffi is mentioning, the Xerces Society, that's spelled Xerces, and that is an invertebrate society dedicated to looking after them and making sure that that they don't decline horribly, named after the Xerces blue butterfly,
Favorite.
which is a butterfly that used to live here in San Francisco, where I live, and went extinct in, we're not sure if it's 1941 or 1943, because its original habitat was developed. I think that it used to live both in the Sunset District and also in parts of the Presidio. And I happen to do restoration work in the Presidio. So that kind of gives me a shiver. It makes me feel as though I'm restoring on Xerces ashes. So it got developed into, housing, urban landscape. Also, the Presidio at that point was made into a military base, or continued to be made into a military base. I think it was already one. And so it was the first butterfly that we documented going extinct because of human activities in North America, which is why this society is named as such, the Xerces Society, just to give folks a little bit of background on that. Yeah. And then Lynn is asking, is it Xerces where we can look for bumblebees by state?
Yes. And also Pollinating Partnership has some really good guides like that as well.
Well, this has been an absolute delight. And I want to encourage Steffi, folks to follow Steffi, look for those classes. Steffi, have we hooked you up yet to contribute your classes to the Nature Journal Club community calendar?
Oh, not yet.
All right, we'll send you information on how to do that. We would love to see those classes listed in that kind of clearinghouse of events. Now, remember, she's got a class coming up on kind of a deep dive in on drawing bees and bumblebees or all bees.
We're going to be specifically drawing bumblebees, but we are going to talk about the different solitary bees and wasps as hornets and flies and mimic insects as well. We'll touch briefly on that. So the ultimate guide to bumblebees and other mimicking insects.
What day is that class again? Sorry, Jack.
Oh, the ultimate guide to drawing bumblebees into your yard and on paper.
Oh, do we have a date for it yet?
I do not have a date for it. It's going to be some date in the pollinating week of June.
Excellent. So, coming to a hive near you. So we've been, Avea mentioned the Xerces Society. This is an organization that you can get in that is involved in insect conservation, and is a really great way to kind of get yourself engaged with thinking about stewardship in an area near you. We started off talking about stewardship and just wanted to circle back to that. The actions that we take make a big difference. And you can find ways to connect with other people through individual action as well as collective action through that organization and other conservation groups near you. We encourage you to look for some of those opportunities and to take part. Steffi, we are so honored to have you here. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Avea, thank you very much for being here and helping us with this and for bringing stewardship to our community. Steffi, before we wrap, are there any last thoughts you have for the group?
I have one that I just put into the chat. I just remembered, if any of you are in the southeastern area, Xerces is actually starting a Southeastern Bumblebee Atlas, and they have free trainings online and in person. The next one that's coming up is May 13th at like the North Carolina Zoo. Well, they'll show you how to capture without killing and document to be part of that Bumblebee Atlas. So if you're interested, you might want to check it out. It's fun. And thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciated it.
I apologize for the final question. Do you have an Instagram, just in case folks would like to follow you?
Yeah, Marked by the Muse is my handle on Instagram. I can put it in the
Say it again, sorry.
Marked by the Muse.
Marked by the Muse, like your website.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Folks, thank you all for being here. If you want to learn more about bees, you can join us on June 7th. We'll have we'll meet a bee researcher who is also a scientific illustrator, and there'll be some great bee stuff going on. And thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Jack.
Group Hive 5. Everybody turn on your cameras. 1, 2, 3, go. There we are. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.